that the discussions have already started, and the podium now is being manned by Honorable Munia Zulu, who is addressing the issues to do with the challenges that the youth in Zambia are facing. Let's even indicate to you that the coming of Professor Lumumba to Zambia is highly anticipated by Zambians, most of the Zambians, because his first attempt to come and feature at this particular forum was not fruitful last year. But this time around, a lot of people are highly expectant and are anticipating to hear what sort of a speech will come of Professor Lumumba. And he's one person that's been described by many scholars as a staunch Pan-Africanist. And as a result of that, we can see that in the audience there's quite a good attendance here at the Mulungushi International Conference Center, so that they can hear what Professor Lumumba will say. For now, let me take you to Honorable Munia Zulu, who is holding the floor.
Pan-African leaders, elements that are Western powers. They gain power with the help of the West. The relationship between such is a father-son kind of arrangement. When the African countries face challenges, they go to their fatherly Westerner to beg for financial crumbs. Yet the bullying father figure makes his wealth from the very African countries through stealing its resources. These Western elements thrive where there is confusion. The wars and instability we see in many African countries as a direct consequence of Western forces. We fight among ourselves and are busy stealing from us, Professor. Comrades here and abroad, we must never believe in leaders who are puppets to the West. They are sellouts. We must remove such Western puppets because they are embarrassing us to our ancestors who think we are cowards. Professor, permit me to report further. We are prepared to walk in the footsteps of past African heroes who fought against imperials. We are prepared to fight against modern imperialism that hides in financial bailouts and aid to African countries. And as we commit to wage war against ideals that destroy Pan-Africanism, we are aware of the fact our comfort is not compatible with our cause. These are things we will sacrifice to ensure that we do not betray those that fought hard for our own sovereignty. I'm hereby waging a crusade against the unwritten West-based school of thought and replace it with an Afrocentric or even a Zamcentric maxim. I am against an attempt by the Western to alter Africanism by forcing onto us cultures which conflict human nature, such as gay marriages. I want to put it out that I have great respect for former president, Republican president of Zambia, for standing firm against these Western values when he refused to allow such unholy practices as gay marriages in Zambia. President Lungu's stance may have cost him so much, but it has earned him dignity, admiration in the eyes of true Pan-African champions. I want to also pay growing respect to the former president for conceding defeat and peacefully handing over after the loss of the 12th of August election. In the same breath, permit me to congratulate President Hakainde Hichilema for his victory in the previous elections. Professor, my country that I'm speaking on behalf of is indeed a shining example of democracy in Africa and the world at large. Professor, you are being hosted in a country that had denied you entry in the previous regime, but this shows you how peaceful this country is, how accommodative we are. Professor, permit me permit me to acknowledge that the CEO of Eden University is a youth like myself. This is a signal, it's a message that we, the young people, are now in charge of our own affairs. I want to thank Eden University for this wonderful program where ideas are shared. Allow me to thank the CEO, extremely the CEO, and his team, because we are young people and we should uplift one another. May God bless Zambia and may God bless Africa. I thank you.
Give him another round of applause, please. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are live now on ZNBC TV. Viewers at home, we'd like to welcome you to the Eden University Public Lecture. The guest speaker is ready seated. And now, please allow me to recognize the presence of Honorable Felix Mutati, the Assistant Secretary General for COMESA, Ambassador Mrs. Chiluket, and the FAS President, Mr. Andrew Kamanga, and the other FAS officials. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to call upon the Vice Chancellor, Professor Mutuku Mutinga, to introduce the CEO of Eden University. Round of applause, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Guest of honor, it's now my single honor and pleasure to call upon the Chief Executive Officer and the President of Eden University, Honorable Kelvin Kaunda, to come forth and invite our guest speaker, Honorable Kaunda.
Thank you, Professor Mutuku Mutinga. He has a very kind way of introducing human beings. The Chancellor of Eden University, Professor Robert Sepel, the Council Chairperson of Eden University, Honorable Ngandu Peter Magande, the Honorable Minister, I'm so sorry, Honorable Minister, the Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, Honorable Felix Mutati, the council members present, the FAS President, the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Eden University, Professor Faxon Goma, the Deputy Secretary General from COMESA. In the interest of time, allow me simply to say, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As a university, we hold the view that every advantage of yesterday is judged in the light of the final issue. It gladdens my heart, therefore, tonight, that that which was conceived some 2 years ago under the theme Chinese investment in Africa and global geodynamics is now a perfect reality. We have waited. We have waited again and again and again, hoping and waiting that one day the deal will be fair. Have a report to give to you, Honorable Minister, that the holding of this historical public lecture tonight attests one thing, among many other things, that finally the deal where the citizens can freely express themselves is here. Congratulations to the great people of this great country in prospect. Congratulations, Honorable Minister. Congratulations to the government of His Excellency, who, by virtue, by mere temptation, I'm tempted to address him as Dr. Hakainde Sami Hijeleba. Honorable Minister, I am mindful that in a multitude of words, sin is not absent. It remains there for me to thank our dear audience tonight. I am aware that some of you have traversed the width and the length of our country just to be able to join us tonight. On behalf of Eden University, which is a great university in prospect, I want to say to Atotela, Ziko Mo, Twalumba Kapati, Asante Sana. Thank you to all of you, individually and collectively, for supporting the cause of this university. It is our sincere hope that all of us will have a great night together, and may God literally bless you. It is now my singular honor and privilege to invite the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Faxon Goma, to give us a brief resume of our guest speaker tonight. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Our guest of honor, our guest speaker, may I write on the protocol that has already been put out by our public relations manager. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Professor Patrick Lok Otieno Lumumba. Several of you have met him on the social media, and so he needs very little introduction. But for us, it's a privilege to have him here in person this evening. Professor Lumumba, welcome to Lusaka, welcome to Zambia. Professor Lumumba is very much one of us, a son of Africa, born on 17th July 1962 and raised in Usenge, a small village on the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya. He was named after an African hero of that time, Patrick Emery Lumumba. Like any other ordinary boy, at that time, he started his elementary education in his ancestral village, Usenge, in 1969. Now, this year is very, very important. Thank you very much. And so it ends here, because the man will give the rest of his accolades. Thank you very much, Professor Lumumba. Welcome.
Thank you. In fact, I'd said, I do not know how many times you go to meetings, and they keep on going on and on and on, in circumstances where the audience can, of their own motion, find out who you are if they needed to be. And what I've done does appear rude, but I think it is necessary rudeness so that we know that the world of information is available there. If people want information about me, they'll find it. And therefore, let us stick to the agenda of this evening. Let me start by recognizing the government ministers here present, the senior administrators of Eden University, the invited guests who are present in this assembly, for giving me the opportunity to be present with you this evening. And I'll ask, because as a young student, I was taught about Mulungushi and the great role that was played at that time by the late Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda, Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania, and Apollo Milton Obote of Uganda about Mulungushi, and coming at a time when this country has lost one of the last icons of the struggle for independence, that you grant me the favor of standing up and for 1 minute remembering Kenneth David Kaunda. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to talk about the state of democracy in Zambia. And this invitation comes at a time when Zambia has gone through an electoral process which has produced its 7th president since she regained her independence. Permit me, therefore, at the very outset, to congratulate President Hakainde Hichilema on his election. Permit me also in the same breath to recognize the former President Edgar Chagwalungu for doing what many African leaders must be strongly persuaded to do, to concede defeat when they lose elections. You may take it for granted, but there are many countries in this continent where electoral processes give birth to chaos and conflict. Permit me also to congratulate all the men and women who have been elected into various positions and those who are being appointed to serve in the administration of President Hakainde Hichilema. These are honeymoon days, but I want to remind you at the very outset that the patience of the citizens are normally very short, and the honeymoon days are even shorter. I wish you God's grace as you discharge your function. When one is invited to talk about democracy in Africa, one must contextualize one's assessment of democracy. One must quickly remind oneself that today, several years after 55 odd African countries regained their independence from their erstwhile colonizers, Africa still remains a continent that is defined by others. We remain a continent which European powers define casually as Francophone, to mean former French colonies, casually as Anglophone, to mean former British colonies, Lusophone casually to mean former Portuguese colonies. The Italians may not have a phone for themselves, but I believe they do in their guarded moments. The Belgians may be shy, but I believe they do. The latter-day occupants and describers of Africa, whether from the West or from the East, in their quiet moments and the inner sanctums of their machinations, must have a way of defining and denigrating us That is our continent. Even when we are told about democracy, we are tested on standards that are external to us. When we hold our elections, they are not deemed to be complete until we have a scorecard. And those scorecards will be from the European Union, from the Commonwealth, or some other erstwhile colonizers and the organizations that they have created over the years. And it is only when they say that we have passed the litmus test that we are deemed to be democratic. That is the Africa that I'm talking about. The Africa that you have invited me to talk about and to contextualize within Zambia is one that has a painful history and is not perhaps the right occasion to go into the annals of history. But it would be remiss on my part, and indeed on the part of anybody who stood on a podium such as this, not to remember that this continent was enslaved and that our erstwhile enslavers are the ones who now pontificate to us. It would be remiss on my part not to say that those enslavers turned colonizers ran roughshod over us, and that before they ran roughshod over us, they sat somewhere in Berlin, in Germany in 1884, and without any care, they parceled us into spheres of influence, and they dehumanized us. They named our countries as they willed, and even rivers which had long sustained our ancestors, they gave names. So that even today, when I traverse the land of Zambia, as indeed other parts of Africa, I still find lakes called Victoria in honor of a British monarch. I still find a fall called Victoria Falls, not Mosi Otunya. I still find a town called Livingston. I look forward to the day, I hope it will be during the administration of Hakainde Hichilema, that those names will be changed. And they did not stop there. After they had parceled us out, they took away our artifacts and they took them to European museums. And they are still there. And after they had finished and they were pushed out by our founding fathers in the 1940s, running through the 1950s, we decided that we were not going to be colonized. And I can hear through the vicissitudes of time the immortal words of Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, that we as Africans would prefer to live in freedom rather than to live in servitude. And there was not only Kwame Nkrumah. Here in Zambia, you'll remember the selfless efforts of Kenneth David Kaunda. You will remember great Africans such as Modibo Keita in Mali, Ahmed Ben Bella in Algeria, Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, Kambarage Nyerere in Tanzania, Ahmed Sékou Touré in Guinea, Leopold Sédar Senghor in Senegal, Apollo Milton Obote in Uganda, Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, and much later you will remember Sobukwe in South Africa, Mandela, NATO, Marshall, Nuyoma, and many other stalwarts who stood so very firm. And I remember so very distinctly on the 6th day of March 1957, when the then Gold Coast regained our independence as Ghana, with the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah as the Prime Minister. And he said then that the freedom of Ghana meant nothing if the rest of Africa was not free. He said famously then that let us seek first the political kingdom and the rest shall be given unto us. We sought and obtained the political kingdom. The rest has been coming in spits and spats. But those words remain as true today as they were when they were spoken. I remember 2 years later in Casablanca, Morocco, the Osagyefo once again reminded his audience, at least those who cared to listen to him, that the imperialists have left. But remember that the imperialists, like the cheetah before it, never changes its spots. He may wear different masks, but he changes not. Kwame may not have been a prophet, but his words have been fulfilled over the years. 3 years later, on the 25th day of May 1963, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, if possessed, he told those who were present, if we do not unite now, if we do not live with a single government now, if we allow our little countries to be the basis of our organization, then let me tell you, in a few years, a new order will have come into place. The neo-colonial project. It will be more dangerous, more rapacious, more pernicious, and all of us will pay. Once again, he was right. He was even right before he spoke, because in 1961, the man for whom I am named, Patrice Emery Lumumba, had been assassinated by the Belgians. 2 years later, Sylvanus Olympia of Togo had been assassinated. 3 years later, the Osagyefo himself had been taken out via coup d'etat. 1 year later, in 1967, Nnamdi Azikiwe had been taken out, and Abubakar Tafawa Balewa and the Sodowner of Sokoto, Ahmadu Bello, had been removed from power. Many followed. Ahmed Ben Bella followed. Modibo Keita followed. And those who remained, it was not for want of effort on the part of the erstwhile colonizers. Coup d'etats became as frequent as breakfast in Africa. That is the Africa that you are asking me to talk about. The French appeared to leave, but they did not leave. They were always there. They formed an organization of former French-speaking countries. The British appeared to leave, but they did not leave. They formed the Commonwealth of Nations, of equal nations, but whose permanent head is the British monarch, equal nations. The Portuguese stayed a little longer. And you here in South Africa knew that the apartheid regime stayed even longer. And you knew that it took bombings here in Lusaka for Zimbabwe to be freed and for Namibia to be freed. That is the Africa that you've invited me to talk about. That Africa is an Africa that continues to suffer. That is not to say that there are no good things that are coming out of her. Remember that the post-colonial African nation is not old. Ghana only regained our independence in 1957. That is slightly over 60 years ago. But look at how our continent, our Africa, continues to be a laboratory for all manner of experiments. I remember in the 1960s, the leaders of the day said, we cannot afford the luxury of multi-party states. And they had their arguments and they had their detractors. Then Europe and America came and told us democracy equals to multi-partyism, equals to periodic elections, equals to free civil society, equals to all the things that they had conceived in Europe and America. And we swallowed it line, hook, and sinker. Democracy was defined for us. We went through that phase, and there is nothing with democracy. Democracy is innocent. But the thing that is not innocent is the dishonesty of those who want to continue to rape and abuse Africa. So that Mother Africa that you're asking me to talk about and to test and judge Zambia against, what is our state as I speak today? What is our state about our Africa? The Africa about which the Osagyefo said, seek ye first the political kingdom, and the rest shall be given unto you. What was the rest that was to be given unto us? We were to feed ourselves. Question that I want to put on the table to you all, are we feeding ourselves? We were to eliminate ignorance. And we have many universities today. Have we eliminated ignorance? We want to heal ourselves by building hospitals. I'm speaking at the time of a pandemic, and we are receiving all manner of vaccines. Moderna, AstraZeneca, Sinopharm. They are coming in droves, but if they removed the label, would we know the difference between Moderna and AstraZeneca? Or we simply consume them because we are told they are? That is my Africa. My Africa that was supposed to take care of herself, to build her roads. She has produced engineers to build her airports, to do all the things, because that is what independence meant, to run our airlines. My Africa, the Africa that you've invited me to talk about this evening, let us take a health check of my Africa. Look at her today as I speak. Is she healthy? Would Kenneth David Kaunda, listening to her pulse, says, "Behold, mother, you are healthy"? Or he would say, "No, put the stethoscope in Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. What do you feel? That is my Africa. Put the stethoscope in the Eastern Congo. What do you feel? Put the stethoscope in Tigray in Ethiopia. What do you feel? Put the stethoscope in Mogadishu, in South Sudan, in Burkina Faso, in Central African Republic, in Mali, in Chad, in Southern Cameroons. What do you feel? In Libya, in the Arab Democratic Republic of Sahrawi. What do you feel? Is the mother continent healthy? And if it is true that if any part of the mother continent is unhealthy, then the rest of the continent is unhealthy, the mother continent is not healthy. The mother continent cries unto us and asks us awkward questions. What have you done to me? Particularly those of us who have had the advantage of education. When we are given the opportunity to serve Mother Africa, we milk her, we bleed her, we steal from her, and what we take from her, we take to Europe, we take to Dubai. When we are given the opportunity to serve in different capacities as our ministers for health, we say all the beautiful things about the local hospitals. But even as much as a cough takes us out to Germany, we who are presiding over our ministries of health, we say there is something called free education, but we dare not take our children to those free education things that we preside over. We want to build roads, and we have faculties of engineers, complete with PhDs and professors, but we go to China to bring a diploma holder to tell us how to build roads. Ali Mazrui was right. We consume what we do not produce and produce what we do not consume. Mother Africa is asking us awkward questions. And we must answer those questions for this generation and generations yet to be born. It cannot be right that we have a continent that has all the resources in the world, but when we are called to conferences where the human race is discussing important things, we are not there. And if we are not there, and I dare you watch the UN General Assembly when an African leader is speaking, it is empty. When we are invited to the G20, you never see the African leader after the photo opportunity. When they have the G7, they select a few for the photo opportunity, and thereafter they are disappeared. Amongst the Committee of Nations, we are not respected. These are awkward and painful things to talk about. 1 week ago, I had the misfortune of listening to a French minister speaking in Bamako, Mali. She was a lady, and she was annoyed that the Malians were reported to have entered into an agreement with a Russian mercenary group called Wagner, who I'm told have operated in Madagascar and in Central African Republic, and they say the French will not allow it. I thought Mali was an independent state. But when she spoke as if she was a school head mistress dressing down a schoolboy. And what disappointed me most, that even some Malians were celebrating that they preferred the Russians to the French, saying that one slave master is better than the other. Those are the depths to which we have sunk as a people, even as we talk about democracy. So, fellow Africans, beyond the sorrows and lamentations, what must we do? How can we redeem ourselves? You know, sometimes I allow myself a little imagination and a little melodrama. And I heard the preacherman preach and pray before we started. And he prayed, among other things, that we should speak things that can change Africa. I have no problem with prayer. We must pray because God is omniscient and omnipresent. But this misguided belief by Africans that everything can be prayed into being is misguided. The things that require technology will be earned by technology, not by theology. And the sooner we realize that, the safer we are. The last time I checked, even when Christ was asking or healing people, he told them to do something about it. And the last time that I checked, there is a sense in which there must be effort on our part. Fellow Africans, the time has come that we must exorcise the ghosts of low self-esteem. I know the world is a global village, but if globalization means that we are dehumanized, then to hell with globalization. If globalization means that the Chinese must come into Africa and take everything, then to hell with globalization. If globalization means that the Americans must come here and tell us the difference between our left and our right hands, then to hell with globalization. We know what our left hand is, and we know what our right hand is. We can conduct our affairs. We need not prove ourselves to anybody. So is Zambia democratic? So has Zambia done well? Because amidst all this gloom, sometimes we think that Africa is not doing well. Africa is doing reasonably well, even in the face of those problems. Sometimes Europe behaves as if she is Shangri-La, El Dorado, the land of God. No, she's not. The Europe that we are talking about, during my lifetime, I've seen the Soviet Union break up into little countries. They have their own problems. As I speak to you now, they are fighting in eastern Ukraine, and I've seen the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians fighting. They are not immune. Conflict is universal, so let not your spirit be damned as if Africa was the only theater of war. They have their own wars. Even in Asia now, ask them what is happening in Myanmar, ask them what is happening in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, and in all those stands that are to be found in that part of the world. Ask them what is happening there. We are not the only ones who are going through this pain. If you go to Latin America, ask them what is happening in Nicaragua, what is happening in Venezuela, what is happening in Colombia, what is happening in Chile and Argentina and in Brazil. They are also going through the same problems as we are going through. And if you doubt that they don't know how to handle elections, you just have to see the last election that they were handling in the United States. If we had a problem with counting in Africa, so you see how they too had problems of counting. And it did not start there. If you go down a little bush too, and I'll go, even they had difficulties in counting. So it is not as if we are the only ones who have these problems. We have our own problems, and what we are telling ourselves is that the time has come for us to solve our problem. And don't you be cheated that the Arab world has no problems of our own. See what is happening in Syria, see what is happening in Iraq, see what is happening in Yemen. They have their own problems. We can do it. And Africa has a few gems. When I look at Africa, Zambia has demonstrated to the world, not once, not twice. You know, on that day, for historical reasons and for many reasons, which I refuse to explain even if I'm asked to. When I saw Kenneth David Kaunda losing the elections, it was painful. But that is not what was great about it. What was great about it is that he conceded defeat. And what was great about it is that historians now record that when they looked for accounts that he held, that the match that he held in accounts anywhere in the world was the equivalent of 8,000 United States dollars after 24 years in power. If I was the Catholic Pope, I would have made him Saint Kenneth David Kaunda. And they did not stop there. You had another leader in Chiluba. You have done it 7 times. Then you had Levi Mwanawasa. Then you had Rupia Banda. Then you had Michael Sata. Then you had Eja Chagwa Lungu. And now you have Hakainde Hichilema. And the last time I checked, none of them has run out of the country. They are here. That is the beauty of it. Zambia is doing well. And it's not only Zambia that is doing well. In Namibia, they are doing well. Sam Nujoma is there. Hifikepunye Pohamba is there. And if you go to Botswana, Kwet Masire is there. Ketumile Masire is there. Ian Kama is there. Beauty itself in all its splendor. If you go to Angola, I'm happy that the former president is now back home. Whether they'll punish him is another debate, but he is at home. And when I go to Mozambique, I'm happy that Armando Guebuza is at home. And when I look at different countries, I go to Malawi here. Being President Mwamutarika is there. President Chakwera is there, whether they'll be punished, and I think if they engage in certain activities that are untoward, even God himself reminds us to punish them in accordance with the law. And I have no problem with that. And if you go to Ghana, you can see something good is happening there. In Senegal, something is good is happening there. In Tanzania, I've seen Nyerere come, I've seen Mwenyi come, I've seen Jakaya come, I've seen Benjamin William Mkapa come, I've seen John Joseph Magufuli come, I've seen Samia Suluhu come. Beauty is in the continent. So that those who think that the continent of Africa is only about chaos, let them be reminded that the continent has things that are happening to her and for her. Our duty is now to redouble our efforts and to make sure that this becomes a tradition. Zambia now finds herself in a very good state. You no longer have to travel out of the country under the pretext of medical problems during an electioneering period in the hope that you will look from outside. You can go to an election tomorrow and in 3 days, you know there'll be changes and there'll be no chaos. That is what democracy is. But the word democracy, somebody told me that we had better look for another word. Not democracy, that we should look for a word called Afrocracy. But I do not want to engage in linguistic adventurism. What I know that in the fullness of time, when Kiswahili becomes the African lingua franca, sooner rather than later we'll find a word that defines what Africa is. So, fellow Africans, today I must conclude, because that which has a beginning must end. And you know, I must only conclude in a particular way, the way I started. And when I started, I went through a historical journey. And I remember that great icon of African independence, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, when speaking in 1958 in Accra, Ghana, and when he writes, "I speak of freedom," the Osagyefo says, "Africa shows me promise, but she also disturbs me. She disturbs me because disunited she remains susceptible to the diabolical machinations of external powers. But she shows promise because if she is united, not the unity of the grave, where there is unanimity without discussion, but the unity where ideas are bounced against one another, then I have no doubt that she can become an important player in the affairs of the world. Today, Africa says that under the aegis of Agenda 2063, she will become a great continent. I hope she will. We must work at it. Today, Africa says that we must break down all the barriers. I too look to those days. I look to the day when, during the watch of this administration in Zambia, I will hear a freshness of voice from Hakainde Hichilema. I want to hear HH say, and him being recorded by historians, that Zambia no longer requires visas from any African country. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when I hear HH saying that any African who wants to form a company in this country will not require a work permit. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when he will join with his fellow Africans saying that we shall only have a single passport. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when he shall participate with others and begin the process of ensuring that we have a single currency in Africa. I look forward to that day. And I look forward to Zambians and Africans liberating themselves, that when work permits are eliminated, that everybody from Africa will congregate in Lusaka. It is not true. Indeed, Lusaka will be opened when it is opened. I look forward to the days when Africans will move, and when I come to Zambia, I'll not be asked, what seeketh thee in Zambia? I look forward to that day. Those days will come, but we must work at it. So permit me to say, I look forward with optimism, saying as I do with the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah that we must neither look east nor west, but we must look forward. Zambia is a great country, and she must demonstrate that she is a great country. I want you to make your former leaders happy wherever they are. Fred Chiluba, Levi Mwanawasa, and the great Kenneth Kaunda, that when they look down, they are able to see that at this Mulungushi, men and women sat. And those men and women were Africans. And the only thing that they saw and recognized is that our continent must rise again. And that our continent can only rise when men and women unite and say that it must be done, because if it is not done, we are done. Ladies and gentlemen, let us play our part. Let us rise in the knowledge that this continent must never be fair game for the world again. Let us rise in the knowledge that we are the mother continent. Let us rise in the knowledge that Africa must liberate herself economically, culturally, and otherwise. It can be done, and it must be done, and it is you and me that must do it. God bless you.
Another round of applause, please. Professor Patrick Lodge Otieno Lumumba would like to thank you so much for that insightful lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to recognize the presence of our guest of honor, Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable Maimbe Mulambo. Thank you for joining us, Honorable. Ladies and gentlemen, we know you might have a few questions for Professor Lumumba, so we're going to have ushers going round, so you can just jot down your questions and Professor Lumumba will be able to answer your questions. So while we write down our questions, we're going to have some entertainment from Exile and some poetry from Chris and Dennis.
Right, it is an honor to be here with the inspiring person behind every work that I do concerning poetry. I am really honored, and just allow me to write through the protocols that have been presented. So my poem is titled, My Kind of Zambia. My kind of Zambia is a kind that is kind, the kind that embraces our kind. It smiles at pain and chooses unity, making division be jealousy. It speaks in Chewa, it dances.